Developed and published by Alientrap, Gunhead is the 3D sequel to the 2D roguelite Cryptark, where you suit up in an armored mech suit equipped to the gills and heavy weaponry and blast away robotic foes to get your hands on precious salvage. In today's video, I'll be lending my thoughts on Gunhead's engaging strategic combat and animated visuals, as well as give a heads up on some of its shortcomings. But before we go rogue, I'd like to give a big thank you to the developers for providing the review code. Alrighty, let's suit up and get salvaging.
Welcome aboard, rookie. You came highly recommended from the employment agency, so I expect good things from you.
In Gunhead, you play as the member of a ragtag group of space-faring pirate scrappers who journey out to derelict ships, scavenge whatever valuables they can, and get paid.
Well. It seems you've managed to surpass my expectations and complete all objectives listed in your dossier.
As mentioned, Gunhead is the sequel to 2017's Cryptark, a 2D side-scrolling roguelite. Gunhead is essentially that same game, but now in 2D and first person, with many of the same concepts and designs carried over. Just a disclaimer, I had never played or heard of Cryptark before this review, but I did put in a couple hours just to get a sense of it. That being said, if you're a Cryptark fan hoping for some in-depth comparisons between the games, I'm not your guy. I will note, however, that where Cryptark featured a campaign mode, rogue mode, and co-op campaign, Gunhead only features one rogue campaign mode.
I went through the pre-flight inspection 3 times, so if anything rattles loose, it ain't my fault.
While Gunhead gives a strong sense of its animated universe and has some eccentric side characters to keep you company, there isn't much of a story to it. Your crew is approached by a shady government organization to commence a secret mission to uncover some alien tech. From what I've gathered, it's pretty much the same plot as the first game. In fact, I was surprised to see Gunhead's opening cutscene was recycled from Cryptark's, with a few minor alterations. To that, I couldn't help but wonder if Gunhead is more of a remake than sequel. While I do enjoy narrative in my games, this wasn't a deal breaker. The visuals and dialogue from my crewmates were enough to let my imagination fill the gaps, and the gameplay loop was more than engaging. But I would have been happy if there was more to the narrative. Starting off with gameplay, Gunhead features a straightforward rogue structure that will be familiar to most fans of the genre. During a run, you choose amongst 3 missions, or rather 3 derelicts to salvage, with differing types that bring differing challenges. Some might be heavy in alarms and security, some might have a lot of repair systems, some might be straight up nuclear and require some caution. When you clear that derelict, you move on to the next level and choose between 3 new derelicts, with the complexity of them increasing with every level you reach. At the beginning of each run, you choose between 6 mech suits that you'll purchase throughout the game, each with differing strengths and weaknesses. Each derelict has a main objective, either being destroy its brainy AI core or defeat a boss, sometimes both, with a handful of bonus objectives to keep things spicy. At the end of each mission, you get your payment with completed bonuses adding to the pot, at which point you can spend that money on new weapons and buffs. Gunhead nails its combat for the most part. Gameplay is all about vertical skirmishes and 6 degrees of freedom. To put it simply, it's not played on the ground, but rather in the air. The player can move in any direction within these low-gravity environments. Naturally, enemies can come at you from all directions, requiring constant movement, constant alertness, and constant twitchiness. What's cool is that your mech suit is able to hold 4 weapons at a time, 2 guns on your left, 2 on your right. There is a plethora of weapons to purchase and enjoy: machine guns, shotguns, rocket launchers, grenade launchers, and melee types, along with shields for defense and specialty items like grapple hooks, with more weapon types unlocked for purchase as you defeat the bosses. In all, the gunplay is rock solid, and I felt like all the weapons were satisfying to use. A big part of the fun is firing them at the same time for devastating combos, like blasting multiple machine guns while raining down nuclear grenades from my launcher. Melee weapons were a favorite for me though. One of the mechs comes with a spike launcher by default, which was a satisfying way to eliminate the smaller pest types and save me ammo. Movement was responsive and effortless. Despite being in low gravity, I felt like a razor blade flying through the wind, with a strong dash mechanic to get me out of danger. During a mission, you can also find buffs for your stats and limited use power-ups, like health boosts, explosives, and stealth camo if you're feeling sneaky. In all, the mechanics are as well oiled as the mech suits themselves. This game also offers a respectable challenge. While Gunhead isn't the hardest roguelite I've played, it certainly demanded some effort, and every death had me eagerly jumping back in to retry. I do have one major complaint about the combat in regards to the sound design, but I'll be touching on that in the presentation section, so stay tuned. The boss fights were solid, while some were surprisingly easy to get through, the last one being a bit of a pushover. There were some that were pretty fiendish and put my fingers through quite the workout. Unfortunately, this roguelite is a bit on the short side. I did beat the quote-unquote campaign faster than I expected, demolishing the final boss in under 10 hours, with the majority of the weapons unlocked. But I was happy to find the game continues past that, with levels bringing more complexity and challenge. So there's good reasons to stay in the game and keep playing, but whether or not that will keep a player hooked depends on them. What I felt like was a missed opportunity was in improving the mech suits themselves. The mechs available are certainly good and offer some differing gameplay and trade-offs, like one is light in armor but great with maneuverability, whereas another is heavy in armor but lousy with maneuverability, that sort of thing. Each also has different starting weapons, which can definitely influence your playstyle, at least initially. But I wish I was able to permanently upgrade the mechs. Buffs and weapons found during a run do improve them in satisfying ways. However, I feel like being able to upgrade them permanently throughout the course of the game, like give them better starting weapons or features, preferably with another harder to obtain resource, would have added a good additional layer of progression. Better yet, it would have been neat if we were able to customize one fully from the start. Perhaps start with one basic gunhead with 2 weapon slots and a limited boost, with the option to purchase more weapon slots, better boosters, and better armor as you go. Perhaps with some trade-offs, like having a certain amount of armor limits what type of booster you can have, and so on. The standout of this game is the level design. Each of the procedurally generated derelicts is like a big puzzle box. In order to complete your main objective, you'll have to take down a series of systems that govern the ships, and the game challenges you to strategize and figure out the best order to take these systems down. Take them out effectively, you'll have these ships wrapped around your finger. Make an error or oversight, and things might get complicated. So let's say you start a mission. You spot the location of an AI core and there's a shield system protecting it. So you make your way to the shield system first to destroy it. But there happens to be a failsafe system that will replace that shield, or a repair system that will begin rebuilding it, or both. So you might need to take those out first. But making matters worse, there's a shuffle system that randomly teleports these systems throughout the ship every 60 seconds. So that definitely needs to be priority. But shoot, it's tied into an alarm system that will send waves of enemies at you if you attack it. It wasn't long before I got hooked on the process of strategically and logically taking these ships down, learning from my mistakes and dealing with unforeseen obstacles. It was really enjoyable and made each mission feel unique. A fun touch too is that each of these systems are themed according to what they control on the ship, which makes each of them a different hurdle to destroy. So the shield system has a big shield you have to get around, the door lock system has a hacking minigame, the security system will set off alarms if you get in its beams, and the hazard system that controls the booby traps is covered in booby traps. But I have yet to mention the bonuses. The bonuses are the real spice. Each mission has 3 optional bonuses that will earn you extra cash if completed. Some bonuses are pretty straightforward, like destroying all the systems or completing the mission within a time limit, and some can really throw a fun wrench, in your plans and up the challenge considerably, like not taking a certain amount of damage or leaving a certain amount of systems intact. And the best ones get you making risky decisions. So you might have a bonus for destroying the sentry turret system first, but there happens to be a nuclear system in place which, if left intact, will trigger a room-enveloping nuclear explosion with any system destroyed. Well, shoot, do I say screw it to that bonus and take out the nuclear system first to save myself the harm, or do I take my chances and try and outrun the blast? And that right there is what I want from roguelites. Tricky choices and lots of risk-reward. Visually, Gunhead isn't a technical juggernaut that's going to make your video card sweat, but I found its art style to be charming and clean, vibing like an animated film or graphic novel with thick black edge lines and simple but smooth matted looking textures. It's a look that actually made me feel nostalgic, as it reminded me of classic PlayStation 2 platformers like Sly Cooper. one of my favorites, especially with its cartoonish cast of alien support characters. The derelict ships are littered with detail, which makes them fun to explore and fight through. Pulsating cables coil throughout, bent pipes go in every direction, along with other elaborate machinery. I found their complexity to be aesthetically pleasing, and rarely did it feel visually messy or confusing. For the most part, I think the dev did a fine job making each ship feel visually distinct. However, I do think the color palette is a bit too limited. Many of these rooms are composed of differing shades of gray and brown, which for me felt a little monotonous at times. Granted, lighting goes a long way to liven things up, with hazy hues that lend some solid atmosphere. And some rooms do pop quite a bit color-wise, but I think a little more vibrancy would have done this game some favors. The experience felt polished all around and performed well on my system, although I often came across enemies clipping through walls and ceilings, and occasionally they got completely stuck in the geometry, which looked pretty jank. One choice I found annoying and unnecessary is that the flame from your jet booster is visible. It's totally disconnected from you, which looks silly, and in the initial hours of the game, I kept thinking it was an enemy attacking me. Sound effects and game feel were enough here. I think the option to turn this off is a fair ask. Where Gunhead's presentation is lacking is in its sound design. There's not much in the way of environmental sound on board the derelicts, almost no ambiance or even effects coming from hazards and systems. It leans pretty heavily on the music to fill the space, and if you were to mute that, it's all pretty silent. Here, take a listen. Where it's irksome, though, is that enemies don't make any sort of noise with the exception of turret fire and their destruction. And it makes it easy for them to blindside you, which in a 0G 360-degree combat game can be frustrating. A lot of times I would enter a room and just get batted around from nowhere. You can make out some noises from some of the enemies, but only when you're close to them, and even then it's faint. There needs to be distinct audio tells to tip players off, or else it's just cheap. Sure, you can spot them on the radar, but attacking enemies don't stick out that much, and more often than not, your attention is going to be focused on your crosshair. Beyond that, what sound effects are here are frankly kind of grating. The static fire of turrets and enveloping sound of enemies teleporting in at times was like nails on a chalkboard, and when mixed with my gunfire, just sounded like a mess that made me wince.
Wreck ships may be dark and broken, but that doesn't make them any less dangerous.
Voice acting is good, but the radio effect the devs are using just sounds bad. It doesn't come off like a static transmission, it just sounds like low quality or highly compressed audio. In fact, Gunhead's predecessor pulled it off far better.
Our contractors have hired us to locate and secure a flagship-class derelict they're calling the Cryptark. There's some piece of premium xenotech on board they want to get their hands on. Our client has a vested interest in this alien flotilla. We've been hired to prospect for a selection of target specimens that they're willing to pay top dollar for.
I hate to say it, but the sound design is flat out incomplete, and what is here is underwhelming. If the devs plan on supporting this game with future updates, improving this needs to be the #1 priority. Gunhead is good, but it could have been amazing. I think the combat and level design are more than solid, and the visuals do the trick, but I think it could have pushed way further with its rogue progression and narrative. Plus, the disappointing sound design shoots the presentation in the foot. I ultimately enjoyed my time with it, so by that it does get my recommendation, but I think this game needs more work. I would say wishlist and keep an eye on the updates and player feedback. What are your thoughts on Gunhead? Be sure to let me know down in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to like, subscribe, share, and smack that bell. If you want to come say hi, my Discord is linked below, along with my affiliate links. I'm Kirk, and thank you for watching this video. Stay safe out there.